Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, the full version is available on Patreon. I'll be uploading all my content there going forward.
Chapter 1 One Piece World East Blue Sea. The wind from the East Blue Sea always carries the fresh scent of citrus and oak barrels. The tips of seagulls' wings sweep across the cobalt blue sea, leaving trails of sunset colors at dusk. On the calm sea, a colorful, hazy ball of light suddenly appeared. A small wooden boat fell out of the ball of light and miraculously landed smoothly on the sea. On this small wooden boat lay a boy of about 17 or 18 years old. With sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, he possessed a handsome and dashing appearance. Anyone who sees this face will be unable to help but exclaim in admiration. What a strikingly handsome man! After the small wooden boat and the person landed smoothly on the sea, the ball of light instantly condensed into a tiny point of light, shooting towards the boy's brow. One shot, one kill. Ugh! The moment the light entered between the eyebrows, the boy suddenly let out a painful roar and sat bolt upright. Where am I? When the boy opened his eyes, he looked at the boundless sea around him and saw that he was on a small wooden boat. His face was full of surprise, but it was not the unease and awe of being in an unfamiliar place, but rather, an uncontrollable ecstasy. I'm not dead. So I've time-traveled. Raylen never dreamed that he would actually be able to travel to another world after death, just like the protagonists in the novels he usually read. It seems there's some truth to the saying hitting the jackpot. It really gives you the chance to travel through time. I don't know where I've traveled to right now. All around was an endless expanse of azure sea, the sky was pristine, and fluffy white clouds filled the air. It was breathtakingly beautiful. Right now, I'm on a delicate little wooden boat. His clothes had changed to coarse linen shirt and shorts, looking somewhat like medieval attire. Where am I? Hey! Just as Raylen was looking around, wondering where he had come to. Turning my head, I saw it not far away. A small boat, resembling a coffin box, came into view. 2 candles were placed on either side of the small boat, casting eerie green flames. The sails even resemble a cross. Most importantly, there was a person squatting behind the small coffin boat. Even more coincidentally, when Raylen looked at the small boat, the man was also staring at Raylen with his yellow eyes, looking at him incredulously. The moment Rayleigh saw that person, he knew he had entered the world of One Piece. Black hair, yellow eyes, and a short, sexy beard. He wore a black top hat adorned with white fur, a burgundy-patterned shirt, a black trench coat, white trousers, and black boots. A cross hung around his neck, and a long knife was slung across his back. This image is all too familiar to me. The man before you is none other than Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman in the world of One Piece. Only, this situation is incredibly awkward. Because the greatest swordsman in the One Piece world is currently crouching behind his coffin ship, La Baba. Gurgle. As the soft sound of the object hitting the sea reached him, Raylen turned his head away in utter embarrassment, not wanting to see the scene that shattered the image of the powerful figure in his mind. Of course, Raylen didn't dare to look anymore. Right now, Raylen has only one thought in his mind. This time, I'll probably die even faster than if I hit the jackpot, right? You're Morpheus. The world's greatest swordsman. The supreme great sword of the 12 crafts, with its chaotic and intricately patterned blades, is wielded by Yoru, known as the world's strongest black sword. One of the 7 warlords of the sea. Originally, they were sailing in the East Blue Sea, known as the weakest sea, searching for Shanks' trail. As usual, after confirming that no one was around using their observation haki, they relieved themselves on the ocean. But who would have thought that just as I was losing my mind, a ball of light suddenly appeared beside me, and then a ship and a person appeared out of thin air. That person was with me, who was using the restroom at the time. They made eye contact. What's most despairing is that you are still experiencing a severe diarrhea. This thing isn't something you can just stop so easily. It seems I'll have to make this person, who somehow appeared out of nowhere, disappear into thin air later. My hair stood on end. A chill ran down my spine. My heart rate suddenly increased. A sudden realization struck him, he was probably not far from death. In his previous life, Rayleigh watched quite a bit of One Piece and was a big fan. However, he only watched a little bit of the Wano Country arc, and mostly watched the rest on short video platforms. I've also read quite a few fan-fiction novels and read a lot of anime. Why did the Krieg pirates suffer such a terrible fate? Raylen still remembers some of the memes and such very clearly. Kriren truly never imagined that his recent transmigration would lead to the meme becoming reality. Needless to say, even someone as powerful, proud, and somewhat narcissistic as Hawkeye, who is obsessed with maintaining a polished image, would still find a way to eliminate that person even if he were seen like that. Heavens above, earth below. I genuinely had no interest in peeping at a man pooping, it was all a misunderstanding. God knows why, after transmigrating to this world, I ended up on this small boat and witnessed all of this. Don't the people of this world possess observation haki? Can't you go a little further away to poop? Well. Oh, right. Golden Finger. I am the most noble person in this vast universe, a transmigrator from Earth. There's no reason to say that someone should just kick the bucket after arriving in this magnificent world and experiencing nothing yet. After all, this is one of my favorite anime worlds since I was a child. Pirates and Marines may have different identities, but the distinction between good and evil is not so clear-cut. Both sides have good people and bad people. Most importantly, this world is wonderful enough. So, come out, system. Ding. The essential system for Earth transmigrators has been activated. Detecting the host's current world. Detecting the host's wishes. Detection complete. Congratulations, host, on the Invincible Explorer system. This system will serve your perfect exploration experience in this other world. Ding. System functions have been customized. This system will be divided into two main sections. Every 100 million berries spent will grant one random host exclusive setting. Every 1 billion berries spent will grant one multiverse character companion. Ding. You are given one chance to draw a host exclusive setting and one chance to draw a character from the myriad worlds as a companion at the start of the game. Does the host wish to extract? Yes/no. Chapter 2. Smoke. Draw it now. The system broadcasts announcements in a mechanical voice simultaneously. Raylen could vaguely hear noises coming from not far behind him. Rayleigh knew from the sound of fabric rubbing together that Hawkeye was about to pull up his pants and deny everything. If I don't draw it now, I might not have the chance to draw it later. Ding. Random setting being drawn. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the setting, extremely handsome. Imposingly handsome, an extremely handsome and imposing figure, possessing the most domineering and imposing aura in this world, whose size is controllable and can be controlled at will. Ding. Drawing a character from multiple worlds. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the character, Saitama. Saitama, a hero driven by passion, possessing immeasurable strength. His power and speed are at their peak. He becomes the strongest through the Saitama training method. If a powerful opponent appears who can rival him, Saitama experiences intense emotions, causing his power to increase exponentially. Skills: normal punch, supersonic movement, continuous normal punches, serious back and forth jump, serious punch, and other special serious attacks. This world is set as Invincible. The host's perception of their summoned companions, a captain they would protect at all costs. Saitama. The moment I saw this name, my back, which had been chilly, suddenly felt warmer than ever before. Even what had just happened now held no deterrent power, only making Raylen feel somewhat comical and amused. Just now, Raylen had been holding it in for ages. He really wanted to laugh. However, due to the pressure from Hawkeye, he didn't dare to laugh. Now. Ha ha ha, I knew this coffin boat was so small, how did you take care of your bodily needs at sea? Is that really how it is? Ha 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 ha. Hawkeye had just pulled up his pants. I was still wondering whether or not to deal with this thing that had suddenly appeared in front of me. Unexpectedly, they heard the unrestrained voices of the boy on the small boat. I clearly sensed the boy's tension, rapid heartbeat, and terrified expression through my observation haki. But in that brief moment when he was pulling up his pants, the boy seemed to have completely lost his previous nervousness, and even dared to tease him on the boat. It really is. That makes no sense. Eagle Eyes narrowed his eyes, and without any hesitation, he reached out and grabbed Knight on his back, preparing to attack this fool who dared to provoke him despite knowing him. But just as Hawkeye's right hand gripped the hilt of his sword, ready to strike, suddenly I felt my hair stood on end. A chill ran down my spine. My heart rate suddenly increased. Hawkeye's sudden realization told him that if he were to unleash that strike, he would die instantly. From the time he learned swordsmanship as a child until now, Hawkeye has never experienced such a terrifying sense of death. It is an absolute warning from the brain and body. Since becoming the world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye hasn't felt like he's met his match or that the opponent is invincible for a long time. But this time, it has transcended the realm of combat. It seems that as long as one takes action, one will directly reach the end of death. Hawkeye was stunned. I was terrified the first time. As a bead of cold sweat slid down his forehead, Hawkeye's yellow pupils suddenly widened in shock. Because, unexpectedly, another person had appeared beside the boy in his line of sight. He had a bald head like a light bulb, wore a rather tacky yellow bodysuit with a white cape, and red gloves. His appearance was very simple. But it's this person. The moment Hawkeye saw it, his pupils contracted sharply, and he felt as if his heart was about to stop beating. The man in front of me. So competitive. He was absolutely the most powerful person he had ever met in his life. Your Excellency, you flatter me. With his right hand off the hilt, Hawkeye looked at Raylen, who was laughing so hard he couldn't straighten up, and gave a nonchalant reply. The instant his hand left the hilt of the knife, Hawkeye felt as if he had come back to life. The suffocating feeling of impending death vanished instantly. Everything returned to normal. The man stood lazily on the boat, his eyes seemingly gazing blankly into the distance, his entire being appearing to be full of flaws. But Hawkeye couldn't even bring himself to say a challenge. After Rayleigh finished laughing, he looked at Mihawk, who was standing politely on the coffin ship, and finally calmed down. I was just so happy. I can finally put my mind at ease completely. The joy of drawing Saitama, combined with the absurd scene that had just occurred, made Rayleigh genuinely happy for a long time. However, while he was happy, Raylen also truly realized that he had indeed traveled through time and had truly come to this world. If Saitama is not summoned, I really will die. Mihawk before my eyes. Although he appears in anime, he is one of my favorite characters. But standing before him in reality, Raylen discovered that this world, once it became a reality, was indeed far more cruel than he had imagined. It seems that the powerful in this world don't care much about the lives of ordinary people. In anime, ordinary people, even with just a casual stroke of the brush, can represent a large crowd. The clash of powerful forces, the explosion of buildings, while an incredibly grand spectacle, no one seemed to consider how many ordinary people would be affected by such a massive event. After all, that's just an anime. But now, this is the world I live in. A world so real it's almost frightening. For someone like me who comes from a peaceful country, it may indeed take some time to accept and adapt. Captain, I'm so hungry. Is there anything to eat? Just as Rayleigh was looking at Hawkeye, deep in thought. Suddenly, Saitama spoke up. Captain. After hearing the name Saitama, Hawkeye felt his heart begin to pound uncontrollably. The young man before him was actually the captain of the powerful figure behind him. That makes sense. Both of these individuals were extremely weak in my perception, and their entire being was riddled with flaws. Just as he gripped the knife hilt, that person brought him the suffocating feeling of death, yet the captain remained motionless, smiling. Now it seems. It's not that the other party didn't respond. Rather, it's that the other party possesses sufficiently strong self-confidence. Thinking of this, Mihawk's gaze became increasingly subdued, losing its usual sharpness and even showing a hint of humility. Oh, Mihawk, how do you usually eat? Chapter 3. Oh my! This sashimi! It's so delicious! On the small wooden boat, in front of Hawkeye, a fish weighing several dozen kilograms was quickly cut into 2 large plates of sashimi under the cold gleam of Eagle Eye's cross-shaped knife. Moreover, the skin and internal organs are removed, and only the most prized parts of the fish are used. It has to be said, Hawkeye truly deserves to be called the world's greatest swordsman. The speed at which they make sashimi is truly impressive. And the fish in this One Piece world are really delicious. Previously, when Raylen saw the characters in the anime eating, with such exaggerated scenes, he always thought it was just because they were tired and loved to eat. After all, they needed to recover their strength. But I only tasted a small piece of this fish from another world. Raylen then found out. He had his reasons for that exaggerated imagery. The ingredients from this other world are far more delicious than I ever imagined. Sweet and fresh, without the slightest fishy smell, this fish, without any processing, already surpasses all the fish that Raylen had eaten in his previous life. With each bite of sashimi, Raylen was instantly transported to the world of Master Chef Xiao Fugui and Master Chef Junior, immersing himself in the dining experience of a viewer. I felt as if I were swimming in the ocean. Enjoy this feast of fish and meat. Clang! Just as Raylen was about to continue enjoying his meal, his chopsticks stuck straight into the plate. When Rayleigh opened his eyes, the plate full of sashimi that had been in front of him had completely vanished without a trace. Saitama, standing beside him, was chewing rapidly, looking extremely focused on his meal. Hey! Saitama! Mr. Mihawk, could you please make us another one? Facing Rayleigh's murderous gaze, Saitama completely avoided eye contact, instead staring intently at Mihawk in front of him. His eyes were bright and sparkling, his gaze unusually intense. Hawkeye naturally received the information conveyed by that gaze. Then, swish swish swish! Tasty! Swish swish swish! Mr. Mihawk, you are absolutely fantastic! Swish swish swish! The captain's asleep, so I'll eat alone. Mr. Mihawk, I want more. I'm eating very carefully now. I'll definitely eat sashimi seriously. The first rays of morning sunlight fall. Raylen howled and screamed for a while on one of the only 2 beds on the small boat, then scratched his backside and struggled to wake up. Fortunately, although the boat is relatively small, it has all the necessary internal organs. It has 2 small rooms, fully equipped with all the necessary living amenities, and even includes a kitchen, toilet, shower room, etc. Raylen's lifestyle needs can be fully met. Furthermore, perhaps because he had transmigrated, Raylen felt that his appetite was at least several times greater than before. However, he is far less abnormal than Saitama. That bald guy showed absolutely no mercy to the world's greatest swordsman, letting him hack and slash his way through the entire afternoon. There might be fish slices for another night. But it probably didn't last just one night. Most importantly, Hawkeye didn't dare to resist much and obediently listened to Saitama's words. Rayleigh could tell that Hawkeye had definitely sensed just how powerful Saitama was. Otherwise, they wouldn't serve willingly. And, if I remember correctly, Hawkeye does indeed know how to cook, and he seems to be quite good at it. Besides, having just arrived in this world, I do need someone to guide me. Eagle Eye. It does seem to be a very good choice. Good morning. Raylen, walking onto the deck of the small boat, greeted the two people who were still cutting and eating fish with great enthusiasm. Judging from this state, these two have probably been eating since yesterday afternoon. Is this scientifically sound? Wrong. This is indeed not a scientific world, it seems my own mind is still too traditional. Good morning, Captain. Saitama still had a poker face, but he greeted everyone quite familiarly. Hawkeye, however, remained as elegant as he had been yesterday, still preparing sashimi at a high standard. A meticulous approach, consistently perfect. A fish flew into the air, and the knight, such a magnificent long blade, was as easy to wield as an extension of his own arm in Hawkeye's hands. It was truly a feast for both the eyes and the palate. I sat down in the same spot I had been sitting in yesterday. Eating sashimi. Hawkeye's coffin boat was now tied to the side of the small wooden boat, drifting aimlessly on the sea along with it. Hawkeye, you don't need to keep cutting for him. You should rest and eat something. Your Excellency, I'm fine. I'm not tired. If Lord Saitama is willing to eat sashimi, then I'm willing to keep making it for him. Hawkeye spoke with remarkable composure. There was even a hint of pride mixed in. Don't be so formal. It seems you already know his name. His name is Saitama, and mine is Raylen. Hello, Lord Raylen, I am your Mihawk, or you may call me Hawkeye, that's my nickname. Hawkeye even stopped slicing sashimi while listening to Raylen introduce himself. The others also stopped eating seriously and began to enjoy their food slowly. All right, you should sit down and have something to eat too. Yes, Your Excellency Raylen. 2 plates of sashimi are enough for 2 people to eat for a long time. Compared to Saitama, the two of them ate their meal slowly and elegantly. By the way, Hawkeye, where is this place? Is it near Klagana Island? After arriving in this world, although a whole night had passed, Raylen still had no idea where he was. No, Lord Raylen, this is the East Sea. East Blue Sea. Upon hearing Hawkeye's answer, Rayleigh was even taken aback. I never expected to end up in the East Blue Sea, and I never expected Hawkeye to be here. The East Blue Sea, being the weakest sea in the region, should theoretically not have anything to attract eagles. The only person who could possibly attract Hawkeye to come here on his own initiative is. I came here to challenge Shanks to a duel, wanting to test my newly learned sword techniques, but I never expected to encounter you two before even finding Shanks. Red hair. East Blue Sea. If it was one of the 4 emperors, possessing immense power, who offered up one of their arms in the weakest East Blue, then it means I arrived in this world quite early. The protagonist, Luffy, still has at least 10 years before he sets sail. Thinking of this, Raylen checked again. What year is it now? Chapter 4. Lord Lyron, this year is 1522 in the sea calendar. 1522. After hearing Hawkeye's answer, Raylen was quite shocked. Originally, Rayleigh thought that it was still a long time before Luffy set sail, but he never expected that he would arrive in the year that Luffy set sail. Right now, is Shanks in the East Blue? This timing doesn't match up. However, Hawkeye is in the East Blue Sea. This timing does indeed match up. If I remember correctly, Hawkeye was also going to use the small cross on his chest to teach the green-haired, 3-sword-wielding man a lesson. Luffy might not have set sail yet, or he might just be at the point of preparing to do so. From this perspective, Hawkeye is also somewhat directionally challenged. And in the following days, this completely proves Raylen's idea. Hawkeye really goes out to sea purely on intuition. Having eaten sashimi for a whole week, Raylen felt like he had eaten more fish in the past few days than in his entire past life combined. Even with the world's most delicious fish, Raylen was starting to feel the effects and was genuinely missing life on land. Mr. Hawkeye, I wonder how much longer it will take before we can sail to an island inhabited by humans. Lord Raylen, based on my estimation, we should be able to reach the large island soon. Hawkeye continued wielding his sword, slicing through the fish as always. His tone remained respectful and calm. Rayleigh felt that Hawkeye in front of him seemed to have already gotten used to his daily work. Hawkeye had no complaints about the tedious and repetitive work of a chef, and would even show a happy expression when Saitama praised him. Raylen always felt. This eagle eye was completely different from what I had imagined. How come he doesn't have that rebellious air about him at all? Saitama hasn't even made a move yet. The island is over there, Captain. Would you like to get there sooner? Saitama, who was resting after finishing his sashimi, stood up immediately after hearing Raylen's words and pointed southeast. As he looked in the direction Saitama was pointing, a red arc flashed in Hawkeye's eyes. A fleeting moment later, looking at Saitama who remained calm, a barely perceptible, extremely solemn expression appeared on his face. Upon hearing Saitama's words, Raylen excitedly stood up and looked in that direction. Then, excitedly, he sat down again. I can't see anything at all. There's no need to rush, Hawkeye. Just hurry up. No way. Lyran really didn't dare to easily agree to Saitama's request. Because Rayleigh wasn't sure if his fragile body could withstand Saitama's abuse. The other party's insistence on hurrying through might mean that he, and this small wooden boat, would all be reduced to dust. Compared to Saitama. Clearly, for me, Hawkeye is still more useful. So, Black Blade Knight really can be used as a paddle. Raylen sensed that the boat's speed had noticeably increased. I turned my head and looked. The world's greatest swordsman at that time. At the stern of the small boat, Knight rowed diligently. Upon seeing this, Raylen's face immediately broke into a wide, joyful smile. Although the boat's speed increased, it still sailed very smoothly. On the small wooden boat. At the bow of the ship, a bald man stood beside it, his simple, unadorned face seemingly showing no interest in anything. On the deck, a handsome young man sat at a small wooden table, eating sashimi in front of him with a happy expression. At the stern, a man dressed in the most magnificent and elegant attire was rowing the boat with an equally ornate longsword. The art style is incredibly bizarre. The small boat traveled for about half an hour. After finishing breakfast, Raylen and his companion went to the bow of the ship, gazing curiously at the outline of the island that had begun to appear in the distance. This was the first time I had seen land since I came into this world. At this moment, Raylen was genuinely curious. What kind of place will be my first stop in this strange world? However, as the small wooden boat got closer and closer, after the island's outline became clear, Raylen's initial joy vanished abruptly, replaced by a serious expression. Near the shore, Raylen could now clearly see the small island in the distance. What was pushed ashore by the tides was no longer fish and shells, but charred wood and bones. A row of masts that refused to fall even after being cut down, each post topped with a dried fishing net. What was stuck to the net was not shiny fish scales, but dark red flocculent matter. It might be seaweed, or it might be something else. The entire coastline is like a living hell. Raylen, who grew up in a peaceful country, had never seen anything like this in his life. After seeing those corpses submerged in seawater, with severed limbs and remains, Raylen's face turned deathly pale instantly, and a wave of nausea washed over him. After the small wooden boat docked, the three of them disembarked. I walked along the only recognizable road into this dilapidated town. The houses on both sides leaned precariously, giving them an odd appearance. Some roofs were completely ripped off, revealing bodies bloated from being submerged in seawater, along with scattered furniture. In this town, almost every household suffered the fate of being completely destroyed. The entire town was deathly silent. As Raylen walked through the town, his emotions were in turmoil. When watching anime before, Raylen had seen depictions of villages and towns destroyed by pirates. However, those scenes in the comics are just fleeting glimpses. It was nothing compared to the awe-inspiring feeling of being there in person. Previously, Raylen only felt that the world was wonderful and exciting. But amidst the surging waves of the times, how many ordinary things have vanished into obscurity? Nobody knows. Just like in the novels I read before, when two great emperors fought, they could casually shatter countless planets and destroy the universe with a single thought. People only see the excitement, but they don't realize that if they were actually in that situation, both of them would be demons. Standing in the center of the town. For the first time, Raylen had a clearer understanding and feeling about the world he had transmigrated to. Saitama was standing to the side. The expression on his face was no longer as simple and unadorned as before, but was full of seriousness and sharpness. Only Hawkeye remained unmoved, seemingly already accustomed to it all. However, the unconscious furrowing of his brows revealed a hint of unease in Hawkeye's expression. The wounds on these people were inflicted by the fishmen. As Hawkeye finished speaking. At this moment, Saitama spoke slowly, his tone carrying a seriousness that perhaps even he himself didn't realize. Fishmen, people from the underwater world? I did kill one once. Chapter 5. This should be the Konam Islands. When Hawkeye revealed that the wounds on these people came from the fishmen, Raylen then found out. The place I'm standing on now should be the Konami Islands, which are occupied by Eren and his gang. The Konam Islands. Located in the northwest of the East Blue Sea, it is under the jurisdiction of the 16th Naval Branch and consists of about 20 villages, including Coco West Village and Hyusha Town. After being taken over by the Arlong pirates, they implemented a ransom system of 100,000 berries for adults and 50,000 berries for children, and forcibly collected protection fees. Furthermore, they built the Arlong Paradise on the island, modeled after Sabayati Park, as their base. Because of their collusion with Captain Rat of the 16th Marine Division, their crimes went undetected by the Marine headquarters for a long time. This rule has lasted for nearly 8 years. Which specific village on the island is this? Raylen didn't know. This village might not even have its name mentioned in the anime, it's just a forgotten corner of the world. But now, looking at the corpses of his own kind scattered throughout the town, Raylen felt a deep sorrow, which was followed by a surge of anger. Only by witnessing this hellish scene firsthand can one truly understand. Only then can one truly feel the evil that Arlong and his gang have committed in this world. Over there, someone is constantly moving corpses. Following the direction Hawkeye was pointing, the group slowly walked over. The line of sight passed through the collapsed houses. Raylen saw it. A man in a green uniform with a windmill on his head was pulling a cart carrying the mangled corpses toward the mountains not far from the village. We followed them for a while. Then you can see a large pit in the forest, and the man is carrying the corpses into it. It's obvious. The man was struggling to carry it. That's obvious. The man carried it with great determination. Raylen and the other two stood silently, watching the man struggle to carry the load with unwavering determination. Before Raylen could say anything, Saitama, who was standing to the side, had already vanished from the spot. The moment Saitama disappeared, Hawkeye's body trembled as always. However, Hawkeye's figure disappeared from the spot shortly afterward. At that moment, Lyran slowly walked towards Aegeon. This man. Raylen was very familiar with it, after all, the iconic windmill was hard to ignore. Who are you people? As Saitama and Hawkeye rapidly moved the corpses from the village into the crater at a speed imperceptible to the naked eye, Ken was stunned into place. His face was filled with shock. His question wasn't answered until Raylen walked over. We are travelers who happened to pass through this place and don't know what happened here. By the time Rayleigh said those words, Hawkeye and Saitama had already finished moving the objects and even helped Ken fill the crater. This entire village was buried here. As Raylen approached, he saw a wooden sign standing behind the large pit. It was written crookedly on top. Sand Orange Village. That was the name of the destroyed village. While Raylen stared at the wooden tombstone, Ken looked at Saitama and Hawkeye with a wary gaze. Judging from the speed at which the two moved almost imperceptibly, and the aura they exuded, it was all due to their speed. Ajian knows. These two are definitely not ordinary people. After looking at Raylen, Ajian spoke up. This village was wiped out by the Arlong pirates, whose bounty is 20 million. This place is now Arlong pirates' territory. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. This is not a place for you noble lords to sightsee. After saying that, Ajian turned and left. What Ajian didn't expect was, after clearly stating that this was Arlong pirates' territory, the seemingly weakest nobleman did not choose to leave, but instead followed behind him with his two warrior servants. Although these two people are very strong. However, Ajian knew perfectly well just how incredibly powerful Arlong and his gang were. This bald young man and the middle-aged nobleman butler, who was dressed quite elegantly, were clearly no match for the Arlong pirates' gang of madmen. And this is anything but low-key. Following me onto this island will surely bring me enormous trouble. Hey, you guys, stop following me. Where did you come from? Go back where you came from. After walking for a while, Ajian stopped and said to Rayleigh in an extremely serious tone. I'm not joking. Arlong and his gang are not people you can mess with. If you don't want to die, get out of here now. Don't go to any island in this area, including the one where the navy is located. After Ajian finished speaking, he looked at Raylen and the others. You noble lords should know that there is a group of people who are true madmen. After saying that, Ajian turned around and walked forward. In Ajian's opinion, these noble gentlemen should now understand that what they said was true. To Ajian's utter surprise, these people didn't listen to him and leave, instead, they followed him as always. They seemed to have absolutely no intention of leaving. And just as Ajian stopped, preparing to stop the group and say something more, Lyran and his two companions completely avoided Ajian, ignoring him and continuing forward. Leave the oddballs in this place to me. Of course, but I'd like to try it out myself. Captain, after your test, is there still a need to hand it over to me? Believe me, it definitely exists. Lord Raylen, these fishmen are likely traitors from Jinbe's crew, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, just like me. They're nothing more than a bunch of minor characters. The 3 of them walked towards the direction of Allen Amusement Park, chatting and laughing. At this moment, Ajian's heart sank to the bottom. These 3 people clearly didn't take what I said to heart. Ajian knew better than anyone what the consequences of this would be. Over the years, it's not that no one has ever been to the Konam Islands, nor that no one has ever resisted or tried to uphold justice. But in the end, these are kind people. But they all ended up with the worst possible outcome. It turned out to be the worst possible outcome. These kind people shouldn't have ended up like this. Ajian's initial, moved/touched, by the heroic deeds of these kind people turned into a suppression and admonition against heroes. Even if they speak ill of me, even if they hate me, we must not allow these good people to set foot on the Konam Islands. This is purgatory. This place is my beloved hometown. Chapter 6. Wow, what a rich orange scent! We passed through a forest. After arriving on the other side of this small island, a rich, citrus scent wafted on the breeze, prompting Raylen to let out a soft exclamation of admiration. This was the first time he had smelled a familiar scent since coming into this world. After all, in her previous life, she had never ridden in such a small wooden boat on the ocean. Raylen had thoroughly experienced the smell of the sea breeze these past few days, and now this orange scent was actually improving his terrible mood. Gentlemen, please don't go any further. Arlong and his gang aren't joking. At this moment, Ajian saw that the three of them still didn't seem to take his words to heart. He couldn't help but feel anxious. He ran a few steps quickly, stretched out his hand to block the three of them, and shouted hysterically. "Get out of here quickly!" After shouting, he gasped for breath, his face filled with anxiety and fear, his reddened eyes brimming with urgency and worry. Raylen could clearly sense the goodwill that Ajian was radiating. This pure feeling was completely different from the feeling that Hawkeye gave him. Although Hawkeye is now by his side and even acts as the cook on his small wooden boat, Raylen can sense that their relationship has not grown closer as a result. Hawkeye's obedience at this moment may be because he sensed something. But what I see before me is Ajian. To myself and my group, whom I was meeting for the first time. Yet it was able to do this and that. This shows that Ajian is not as sharp as his ferocious appearance and aggressive words suggest, rather, he is a warm person to the core. I thought so when I watched the anime before. Now, after actually experiencing it, this feeling is even stronger. Don't worry, Jian, the three of us might be a little bit stronger than you think. As Lyran said this, he raised his right hand and held up his thumb and forefinger in front of Ajian's eyes, making out the tiny difference. "Sir, how do you know my name?" Ajian was clearly startled after hearing Raylun's words. After all, a nobleman like Raylen should have no connection with him whatsoever. "Because I was born omniscient, knowing everything about this world." In response to Ajian's words, Raylun simply laughed it off, making a joke. He immediately put his arm around Ajian's shoulder, and while blocking Ajian from walking forward, he pointed to the two people behind him. "Those two, especially the bald one, are the strongest." When Raylen said this, his confidence was palpable. If anyone else dared to claim invincibility, Hawkeye would absolutely scoff. After all, as the world's greatest swordsman, his knowledge far surpasses that of ordinary people. He has witnessed the most powerful combat forces in the world and knows the most terrifying powers. But now, Hawkeye didn't refute Raylen at all after hearing his words. Instead, he simply nodded in agreement. Ajian looked at Raylun's confident demeanor. Although deep down, he still desperately wanted to dissuade them. But somehow, after seeing Saitama's calm and simple expression, she miraculously felt somewhat at ease and didn't try to stop the three of them anymore. However, after walking in the direction the three people were going for a while, Ajian seemed to realize something. "Distinguished guests, why don't you visit our Kokoyasi village first? Our oranges are the best in the world." Seeing Ajian's enthusiastic invitation, the three of them, including Raylen, strangely shook their heads. Saitama, in particular, was shaking his reflective head incredibly fast. "There are quite a few strange people there. Let's deal with them first, then enjoy the food. That way, we can truly make the most of it." "That's what I think too." After hearing Saitama's words, Raylen nodded in agreement. However, Hawkeye seemed somewhat surprised after hearing what the two said. Because the direction Saitama was pointing wasn't the location of the Arlong pirates that Ken had mentioned on the archipelago, but rather a place he was very familiar with. "That symbol, does your archipelago have a naval base?" Hawkeye's tone was full of curiosity. After all, he had witnessed the tragic scene that had just unfolded in the village. Based on Ajian's description, Hawkeye instinctively assumed that this archipelago was occupied by the Arlong pirates. Because of the pirates' control, no news could get out, which led to the Arlong pirates occupying this place for so many years. But now, after seeing the iconic buildings of that naval base, Hawkeye was a little confused. There are naval bases on these islands, so how could such a tragedy have occurred? When he thought of this, a fierce glint flashed in Hawkeye's eyes. "We do indeed have a naval base here, but that base is another Arlong paradise, even more evil than Arlong paradise. It's precisely because of that naval base, and the presence of Colonel Rat from the 16th branch, that news from our Kokoyasi village has been completely unable to get out, preventing us from obtaining genuine naval assistance and turning us into the hell we are today. Actually, at the beginning, our Kokoyasi village did send villagers to the naval base for help, but all the villagers who came for help died. Gradually, we lost all hope. Even if we could go to sea, we weren't sure if the navy we encountered was righteous. Listening to Ajian's story, all three could sense the overwhelming despair in his words. When you finally escape from hell after going through countless hardships, you think you can get help. Unexpectedly, after running to the border, they saw another prison wall. This despair. Perhaps that's what will truly make Ajian and the others have no desire to seek help from the outside world, nor any desire to rebel. It's so ugly, Navy. Oh, so the Navy isn't all good people in this world either. It seems there are even more weirdos in this world than in mice. Saitama scratched his head, muttering to himself thoughtfully. Yes, Saitama, this world also needs heroes like you, driven by passion. After saying that, Raylen started walking directly towards the naval base ahead. Hawkeye and Saitama followed behind Rayleigh. Ajian didn't stop the three of them anymore, but he didn't follow them either, he just watched from a distance. His eyes held hope, but even more so, a resolute determination. Chapter 7. This naval base is truly awful. Approaching the naval base, Hawkeye's cold, stern voice rang out. The three of them immediately spotted some carelessly discarded corpses not far from the base's main gate. These corpses, their wounds so raw and exposed. This exposed the extent of abuse these people suffered before their deaths. Some of the female corpses were particularly gruesome to look at. These corpses were clearly victims of a recent heinous crime. However, the white bones near the body indicated that this place seemed to be a frequent dumping ground for corpses by this group of sailors. On this archipelago, over such a long period of time, countless tragedies have already occurred. In this world, outside the naval base that represents justice, no one knows just how heinous the crimes have been. Wrong. Someone knows. Now the person who committed the crime knows. Before Rayleigh could say anything, Hawkeye reached out and touched Knight, who was carrying him on his back. These filthy people don't deserve the Knight, but these souls do. Only. Before Hawkeye could even raise his sword at the naval base, an aura burst forth from Raylen's body in an instant. Is this mysterious captain finally going to make his move? This was Hawkeye's first thought. Because he had been fully able to sense Saitama's power before. Having a crew member like Saitama, and Saitama's every word and action showing him instinctive respect for Raylen, means that Raylen is definitely not as simple as he perceives him to be. After all, in Hawkeye's perception, Raylen was just an ordinary person. But how could that be? Seeing that Rayleigh was about to make a move, Hawkeye involuntarily narrowed his eyes, preparing to see what this mysterious captain was capable of. Momentum. He simply released his aura. This reveals the qualities of the mysterious captain, Raylen, as a leader, the qualities of a king. As expected, this guy has conqueror's haki. As Raylen unleashed his aura, he walked towards the naval base. An invisible force instantly filled the surroundings. As Raylen advanced step by step, his momentum continued to rise, and he grew stronger. The guards at the base gate, seeing the group of three approaching, were about to rush over to question them when they rolled their eyes, completely lost consciousness, and collapsed to the ground. The pebbles on the ground, defying gravity, began to tremble and float in the air, hovering at knee height, like a cluster of fearful stars. Immediately afterwards, countless black and red cracks burst forth from the dense blue stone slab where Raylen stood. It wasn't that it was cracked by the tremor, it was more like the stone slab's own structure actively choosing to disintegrate under the pressure of some kind of will. The cracks spread like lightning, silently turning the stone into dust wherever they went, revealing the damp, pulsating soil beneath. The air became viscous, and the light around Raylen underwent strange refraction and bending. This makes the distant naval base appear to sway in the water. Hawkeye sensed the aura emanating from Rayleigh, his sharp pupils filled with shock. He had not only seen Conqueror's haki, but had also personally faced it countless times. Hawkeye always thought his friend Shanks was the strongest in the world because of his domineering presence. Even Whitebeard, the strongest man, seems to be inferior to Shanks in terms of Conqueror's haki, according to Hawkeye. But this man in front of me. The aura it's currently unleashing has already reached the pinnacle of Shanks' power. But what's most astonishing is that Raylen's aura continues to rise. Even just by sheer momentum. This put immense pressure on him, the world's greatest swordsman. As Raylen and his two companions stepped into the naval base, the black and red lightning did not strike down, but burst forth directly from nothingness, like countless thick, furious blood vessels, meandering, exploding, and tearing at each other in the air. These lightning bolts produced no thunder, only a low-frequency hum that could be felt directly on the eardrums, as if space itself was being repeatedly folded by a tremendous force. At this moment, the entire naval base had become completely silent. Everywhere the eye can see, they were all Navy soldiers lying on the ground. Within this base, no one could remain conscious under such pressure. The dense, leaden grey clouds high in the sky were violently stirred, torn apart, and swirled into a giant eye of the storm by an invisible force. The eye of the storm wasn't the sky, but a deep, seemingly bottomless darkness, casting not light, but a pure sense of oppression. Sunlight struggled to pierce through the gaps in the clouds, only to be distorted and swallowed up at the edge of the black and red lightning field, forming a pale halo. At this moment, Raylen was feeling the aura emanating from himself. When Raylen first obtained the entry, he wanted to test what kind of effect the system's description of the most domineering and imposing aura in this world would have. Now, let's give it a try. The sheer power of this world can indeed kill. Even at this level of intensity, it's not even the strongest I can achieve. At this moment, Raylen continued to build up his momentum. Boom! As Rayleigh's aura continued to rise, the area around the naval base seemed to transform into a crucible of will. Moreover, at this moment, Raylen had already controlled his aura within this area. Gravel, dust, even sound and conventional colors are all emptied and purified, leaving only the most primal oppression. In this region, the laws of nature seem to have temporarily broken down, and only the will of the king is roaring in its most primal form. Why are all these people dizzy? Just when Raylen felt that he had become a true god in this region, a bald man's voice rang out, utterly calm. When Rayleigh turned his head, he saw that Saitama seemed completely unaffected, his expression still as simple and unadorned as ever. A man standing to the side, claiming to be the world's greatest swordsman. But they were already bent over, covered in sweat. Saitama. He's still Saitama after all. Having already conducted the experiment, Raylen instantly suppressed his aura. After all, the entire naval base now seems to be on the verge of collapse, with cracks all over the walls. Just by sheer force of his will, Rayleigh felt he could crush the base into dust. And in the instant that Raylen withdrew his aura, Hawkeye suddenly collapsed to the ground, panting heavily, his sharp yellow eyes staring at Rayleigh in disbelief. Chapter 8. Is it really possible to achieve this level of success just through sheer force of will? This is what Hawkeye is thinking right now. That's my only idea. Unleash your power and eliminate the weaker foe. This is just the most basic application of Conqueror's haki. The most powerful aspect of Conqueror's haki, which can only be comprehended by 1 in 10,000 people with the qualities of a king, is the ultimate offensive power of its binding force. Ba-chan is, as the name suggests, short for Ba-wang-se-chan. This refers to a high-level combat technique that involves imbuing weapons or the body with Conqueror's haki to significantly enhance attack power. A normal attack. It can then shatter the heavens and shake the earth. In the entire world of One Piece, very few people can use the technique of Hakamatsu, and each of them is one of the strongest in the world. Hawkeye had contact with most of these people. They also clearly knew the level of their conqueror's haki. The mysterious young man named Raylen is standing before me. In Hawkeye's view, no one in the world can probably match the strength of Conqueror's haki. Captain Raylen, these men seem to have been completely stunned by your imposing aura. After giving the naval base a quick glance, Hawkeye spoke to Rayleigh. Rayleigh was somewhat surprised by the nickname Hawkeye, but he didn't object and simply nodded. And Raylen was not surprised at all by this outcome. After all, he had consciously controlled his aura when he released it. Saitama then vanished completely from his spot in a flash. The moment Saitama disappeared, Hawkeye's pupils suddenly contracted. Because Hawkeye felt a chill run through him, as his most prized eyesight and perception became utterly ridiculous. This is only the second time Hawkeye has felt so insecure since he became famous. The first time was when he was on the coffin ship, intending to draw his sword. At the time, although he felt a deadly threat of death, he was under so much mental pressure that he never actually witnessed Saitama in action. Now, after witnessing Saitama's speed as if he disappeared in an instant, Hawkeye couldn't help but ask himself a question. If the other party wanted to attack me, wouldn't I already be headless by now? The answer to this question, Hawkeye knows better than anyone. At the same time, within this naval base, bursts of blood mist erupted everywhere. The vast majority of those affected were people in naval uniforms, while some were fishmen whose appearance was completely different from humans. Saitama uses his unique method of identifying weirdos to eliminate all of them one by one in this naval base. It also uses a speed that is difficult to discern with the naked eye. All the civilians who had been stunned by the shockwave were moved outside the naval base. Of course, some of these civilians were also wearing naval uniforms. Which one is Colonel Mouse? Is it inside this military base? Raylen didn't know. All Rayleigh knew was that even if the rat colonel wasn't dead now, he would never be able to control these islands again. There are two malignant tumors on these archipelagos. One of them was the Arlong pirates. After all, it was those fishmen from the Arlong pirates who tyrannized this archipelago, creating this hellish place and committing countless sins. The other one is the naval base where he is currently located. If it weren't for Colonel Rat's cover-up, acceptance of bribes, and cooperation with the Arlong pirates, this archipelago wouldn't be in this situation. Neither is inherently more evil. They're all equally damnable. After dealing with the swarm of bugs, Raylen naturally reaped his own spoils. Wow! The Golden Legend! So much gold and silver treasure! Leading Saitama and Hawkeye to the deepest vault of the base, Saitama casually yanked open the several-meter-thick iron warehouse door, sending it flying. Inside were chests and chests of gold and silver treasures, piled up like small mountains of Pele. Their numbers are numerous. Even Hawkeye, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, couldn't help but sigh. How much have those beasts plundered from the Arlong pirates over the past few years? A conservative estimate puts the total value at least over 100 million berries. Looking at the warehouse full of gold and silver treasures in front of him, without any hesitation, Raylen immediately communicated with the system in his mind. System, how many berries are all these things in front of me worth in total? Ding! Loot detected, estimated total value of over 350 million berries. Host, do you wish to collect it all? Upon hearing the system's voice, Raylen did not hesitate at all and immediately chose to collect everything. From an eagle-eye perspective, all that could be seen was Raylen gently waving his hand towards the treasure in the warehouse in front of him. The entire warehouse of treasure vanished in an instant, as if nothing had ever been in the warehouse. Eagle-eye, who witnessed all of this, suddenly narrowed his pupils again. This is a space-based ability. Rayleigh's unpredictable methods truly shocked Hawkeye once again. I feel that coming to the East Blue Sea, the weakest sea in the world, was the best decision I've ever made in my life. Hawkeye had never encountered such mysterious and powerful individuals as Rayleigh and Saitama before. Hawkeye is even a little reluctant to leave now. I have a feeling that my boarding this little wooden boat was fate. The way these two mysterious and powerful individuals operate is very much to Hawkeye's liking. Faced with this warehouse of treasure, they did not choose to be merciful and keep it, but instead distributed it to the local common people. In Hawkeye's view, this decision was absolutely correct. If they take it all, the final outcome will only be a happy one for everyone. However, if the treasure were to be distributed equally among the local common people, even if there were joyful results in the short term, in the end, it would surely lead to endless troubles. Hawkeye was perfectly aware of this. Killing these Marines didn't cause Hawkeye any psychological pressure. Even though he is a Shishibukai and nominally a member of the Navy, he doesn't want to consider any of that right now. Even when news of the destruction of the naval base reached Marineford, the news still lingered. Arrest warrants and the like. For powerful individuals like Rayleigh and Saitama, it's probably pointless. The 7 warlords of the sea. In relation to this identity today, Hawkeye would rather stay by Saitama and Rayleigh's side, even if he's just a chef who cuts sashimi. Life from now on will definitely be very interesting. Hawkeye is now even a little impatient to see what kind of earth-shattering waves Raylen and Saitama will unleash in the future world. Chapter 9. Boom. Boom. The moment the three walked out of the naval base, Raylen unleashed his power once again. The already dilapidated naval base, now overwhelmed, let out a tremendous roar. East Blue Sea Branch 16 of the Navy. And so it went, along with the countless sins it committed. They vanished completely from this archipelago. Bang! Ajian in the distance. He was holding his shovel, digging with unwavering determination. The same kind of pit as always. After hearing a tremendous noise and witnessing the horrific naval base completely collapse before his eyes, Ajian's tears instantly streamed down his face. He knelt straight down on the ground, staring at the collapsed naval base, and burst into tears. Ever since the Arlong pirates arrived on these islands and colluded with the marine base, he ruled these archipelagos for several years in a hellish manner. When the fishman's sword slashed at his cheeks, chest, and body, Ajian didn't cry. Even as the Navy, on whom he had placed his hopes, plundered like fishmen, Ajian never cried. But now, Ajian! He trembled all over as he released his emotions, without any concealment or restraint. She just kept crying. He was venting. Who are you people? What did you do to Ajian? Outside a small village. Just as Raylen and his group were about to enter, a young, handsome girl with blue hair, wearing slippers and sporting a tattoo stood at the village entrance, blocking their way. His eyes were full of vigilance, and he held a wooden stick in his hand. My beautiful lady, Ajian was just too emotional and fainted from crying. You'll understand what happened once he wakes up. Looking at the wary Nojiko, Raylen smiled and offered an explanation. After staring at Raylen's face for a while, Nojiko put down the wooden stick in her hand. Although she was still a little wary, she no longer had the hostility she had shown before. Instead, he bowed deeply to Raylen with great seriousness. Sir, thank you so much for bringing him back. Don't be so polite. Where should we put Ajian? Please come this way with me. Seeing Ken being carried in a princess-like embrace by a handsome older man carrying a magnificent longsword, Nojiko sensed something was amiss and immediately led the three of them toward the cabin. Walk along the gravel path into the village. Lyran and the other two looked around at Kokoyashi village. The houses were not arranged neatly like in the previous village, but were scattered very randomly, and each house had several orange trees around it. This time of year is perfect for the orange harvest. The orange fruits hung heavily on the branches, each one looking quite substantial. After arriving at Nojiko's courtyard, when Hawkeye took the unconscious Ken back to his house, Saitama couldn't resist and picked an orange from the orange tree in Nojiko's yard. When the orange peel was removed, the juice sprayed out directly in the opposite direction of Saitama's pressing fingers. The sweet aroma of oranges instantly filled the air. Unable to resist the smell, Raylen also picked an orange and peeled it. Sweet. These oranges are just like the dream oranges I'd only ever seen in commercials, perfectly round and plump, bursting with juice, and incredibly sweet and delicious. This orange. It's so orangey. How is it? Delicious, right? When Nojiko asked the question, her little face was held high, and her tone was full of pride. It's so delicious. Saitama didn't immediately use his serious eating style. Instead, he was very friendly, and after finishing an orange, he smiled and nodded at Noki. Even Rayleigh didn't expect that Saitama would have such a gentle side. But how could a hero who acts out of pure passion not have a kind heart? Reaching out, Raylen also picked an orange and tasted it. The orange juice burst on my lips and tongue, it was so delicious. With such delicious fruit, it's safe to say that not only Kokoyashi village, but the entire archipelago, shouldn't be in such a dilapidated state as it is today. With such oranges, the Konomiya Islands could definitely become one of the wealthiest regions in the East Blue Sea. However, due to the collusion between the Navy's 16th Division and the Arlong pirates, the Konam Islands, ironically, have become the most obscure and unremarkable area in the entire East Blue Sea. At this moment, almost every house in Kokoyashi village has dilapidated walls, the buildings and fences show obvious signs of damage and repair. This village. It's unimaginable how many times the Arlong pirates attacked them during those nearly 8 years. The oranges here are definitely not ordinary. After Hawkeye put Ken on the bed inside the house, he came out and started eating oranges with Rayleigh and Saitama. Meanwhile, Nojiko brought over another bowl of oranges that looked even larger, and presented it to the three of them like a treasure. Of all the oranges in my yard, the ones from the tree behind the yard are the best. You should try some. When Nojiko said this, her eyes narrowed, and her smile was so bright and sunny. It's obvious. The three of them worked so hard on the oranges and praised them, which made Nojiko very happy. At this point, she had completely lost her previous guard, but when she spoke, the overall meaning she conveyed was still the same as when Ajian had seen her and her group before. I can pack you some extra oranges, you can take them with you when you leave. Yes. Nojiko had no intention of staying any longer to entertain the group, instead, she kept urging them to leave as soon as possible. However, Raylen simply smiled. After saying a few words, Nojiko stopped trying to persuade them and sat down with the three of them to enjoy the leisurely time. As more and more orange peels accumulated on the ground, Raylen's expression grew increasingly relaxed. The emotions I felt earlier have gradually subsided, and I've calmed down again. After this incident, Raylen has unconsciously come to accept the fact that he has transmigrated and everything in this world. Nowadays, this world is no longer just an anime for me, but an absolutely real world. When the three of them were full and just about to get up to go check out Arlong Paradise, they heard a clear, bright girl's voice outside. Nojiko. I'm back. Chapter 10. The moment that sound appeared, Noki suddenly stood up from her chair. A fleeting look of happiness crossed her face, but when she saw the three of them, her gaze shifted to one of apology. I'm sorry, gentlemen, my sister has returned, so I may not be able to entertain you any longer. If you've finished eating, please take these oranges with you as you leave. As Nojiko spoke, she pushed several boxes of oranges that she had prepared to her side toward herself. The message asking them to leave is already very clear. Just as Nojiko finished speaking, another girl appeared in the courtyard. The girl has brown eyes and beautiful short orange hair, and a stunning figure. She wore a gold bracelet on her left wrist. She wore pearl earrings and had a tattoo on her left shoulder similar to the one worn by Nojiko. As the girl appeared, their eyes involuntarily fell on Raylen and his two companions. Certainly. After scanning the area, his gaze remained fixed on Hawkeye. After all, Hawkeye's longsword, Yoru, being a supreme-grade sword, was inlaid with jewels. Furthermore, Hawkeye's overall attire was extremely luxurious, naturally making him an instant target for the young girl. "Excuse me, distinguished guests, this is my younger sister, Nami. She's still young and a bit noisy, please don't mind." "Of course I don't mind, your sister is very pretty." Seeing Nami's hot figure and revealing clothes, Rayleigh sincerely complimented her. "You have great taste. I really like them." "Sister, who are these people?" "Nami. You can't ask like that directly, it's impolite." Although Nojiko was criticizing Nami, Rayleigh could see the natural protectiveness and tenderness Nojiko felt for her younger sister. Rayleigh knew Nami very well and liked her very much. In Rayleigh's eyes, Nami was more than just a beautiful woman with a good figure and appearance. The main reason she's well liked is because of her good personality. Moreover, she is a resolute woman who inherited the will of her adoptive mother, Belmere, to always have the strength to smile. Whether in battle or sick, Nami always wears a smile. At the same time, she also inherited Belmere's compassion, was kind-hearted, incredibly gentle, and had a sunny and cheerful personality. Now that they've met again, Rayleigh perceives Nami's personality even more clearly. Seeing is believing, that's pretty much the feeling. "Alright, never mind where you're from, sister. You should hurry up and get our guests home safely. Come inside, I have a big surprise for you." After Nami finished speaking to Nojiko with a smile, she skipped and hopped back into the house. Meanwhile, Nojiko smiled and spoke to Raylen and the other two again. "I'm so sorry, you three. Thank you so much for helping Ajian, but you heard what my sister said, and these islands aren't very safe. You should leave here as soon as possible." After Nojiko finished speaking, she smiled and gestured for the others to leave. But Raylen had no intention of simply carrying a few boxes of oranges and leaving the archipelago. He simply stood up and said something to Nojiko in front of him. "Before we leave, could you do us one last favor?" Nojiko naturally wouldn't refuse Raylen's small request, and immediately replied cheerfully. "Of course, please tell me. Do you know where that Aaron paradise is on these islands? Could you take my two companions there?" After Raylen said those words, Nojiko's smile froze on her face, and her eyes instantly became vacant. This quickly turned into horror and disbelief. She even subconsciously took a few steps back. When Nojiko looked at him again, the warmth from before was gone. Instead, Nojiko's expression was one of utter shock, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. His lips even started to tremble slightly. He stretched out his hand, pointing tremblingly at Raylen and his two companions, clearly frightened by Raylen's words. "What did you say? Arlong paradise? You want me to take your two companions there?" "Yes, it's Arlong paradise. It shouldn't be too far from here, right?" Upon hearing Raylen's affirmative words again, Nojiko's condition deteriorated considerably. Nojiko is now somewhat unsure of Raylen and his group's identities. "Let's go to Allen Amusement Park. Is he one of the bad guys with Arlong and his gang? Or is he someone who doesn't know how terrifying that place is?" Nojiko calmed herself down and, forcing herself to remain composed, spoke to Raylen. What are you doing there?" Although Nojiko was trying to remain calm, the trembling in her voice was completely undeniable. When Rayleigh saw Nojiko, who had just been chatting and laughing with them, suddenly become like this, he felt a mixture of amusement and heartache. In recent years, the Arlong pirates have caused far too much harm to the people on these islands. But then Raylen thought about it again and found it somewhat amusing. Despite being so terrified of the Arlong pirates, he was playfully joking and teasing the world's greatest swordsman and Saitama while eating oranges. Thinking of this, a playful smile crept onto Raylen's lips. "Miss, we're going there to eliminate Arlong paradise. Just lead us there." Hawkeye, observing Nojiko's expression, could roughly guess what Nojiko was thinking, and thus spoke calmly to her. However, this happened immediately after Hawkeye finished speaking. Contrary to expectations, Nojiko was not the overjoyed person Hawkeye was supposed to be. On the contrary. Upon hearing this, Nojiko's expression changed from one of timidity and hesitation to one of worry and fear, and she trembled even more violently. You actually want to go after Arlong's crew? No, absolutely not. You'd better leave right now. Arlong's crew aren't ordinary pirates, they're not what you think. Nojiko's tone urging the group to leave was even stronger than before. Unconsciously, Nojiko's voice became much louder due to her fear. The sound naturally alerted Nami, who had already entered the house. With a bang, the door opened. Nami rushed to the front of the group. What did you just say? You three think you can handle Arlong and his gang? Chapter 11. Nami's tone. They were equally shocked, filled with disbelief. Especially when he said the words deal with Arlong and his gang, it was as if he had heard something unbelievable. It seemed like he used a lot of strength to say those words. No, absolutely not. No matter where you're from, leave Kokoyashi village right now. Go back to your place. Alan and his men are not someone noble young masters like you can handle. Compared to Noki, Nami's persuasion was clearly more straightforward and blunt. The moment those words were spoken, action was already taken. He walked straight over, picked up the boxes of oranges that Noki had packed, and headed out of Kokoyashi village. But, beautiful lady, if you'd be willing to lead the way, I think we should be able to deal with this Arlong gang you've been talking about very quickly. Rayleigh wasn't with Nami at this moment. Instead, he called out to Nami just as she had taken a couple of steps. However, Nami didn't seem to believe Rayleigh's words at all. You don't know, Arlong and his crew aren't like the other pirates you encountered in the East Blue. Arlong and his crew are fishmen, and a very strong and large group of them. When Nami looked at Rayleigh again and spoke, her eyes even held a hint of pleading. Similarly, there was an extremely serious and earnest tone. It's clear that Nami is genuinely worried about herself. However, just as they were talking, they heard the door to the room next to them open. Nami, take the adults with you. Uncle Jian. Yes, it was Jian who opened the door. It was probably the sound of their arguing that woke up Jian, who had just fainted from crying. After hearing what Ken said, Nami and Nojiko immediately surrounded him. It seems to mean, how could you do this? But soon, they learned from Jian why he said that. The naval branch has already been wiped out by several high-ranking officials. As soon as Jian uttered those words, Nami and Nojiko froze on the spot, their expressions as shocked and incredulous as ever. But this time, it was clearly accompanied by an unbelievable ecstasy. After Jian nodded affirmatively again, the two women immediately turned around, fixing their gazes firmly on Raylen. After seeing the two women, his expression was one of extreme shock and joy. Raylen calmly repeated it again. Hey ladies, how about it? Could you take my two companions there now? After Raylen said those words again, Nojiko and Nami's tears welled up instantly. And just then, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared from the house next door, looking equally shocked. This middle-aged man seems to know Jian quite well. Before he even rushed into the yard, he started shouting. Jian, is what you just said true? I think I just heard you say that the naval branch base was destroyed. This man has a very loud voice. The moment those words were spoken, the doors of several more houses opened, and a few people looked around before stepping out of their homes and into the courtyard. Everyone's face showed shock, but also a hint of unease. However, their eyes were fixed on Jian. Yes, folks, the Navy branch has been wiped out by the Three Lords. Now, the Three Lords are preparing to depart for Arlong Park. This time, I think it's up to us all to guide them. Nami, Nojiko, and Shin, you go and call the villagers over. Sean, that's the uncle who was shouting loudly just now. After hearing what Ajian said. After seeing the determination in Ajian's eyes. Without any hesitation, the uncle named Sean turned around and ran out. We didn't actually have to take this risk. Once I've earned 100 million berries, we could. Nami, don't be silly. Nami hadn't even finished speaking. Nojiko and Ajian shouted it out in unison. After hearing what the two said, Nami's tears flowed even faster and more profusely. In those eyes, there was brokenness, there was pain. It's also a kind of giving up, a kind of a new hope. After a brief struggle, Nojiko went over and hugged Nami, then grabbed her hand and ran out of the courtyard. Raylen and his group were standing by, watching all of this unfold. It would be a lie to say I wasn't moved. However, Raylen is now very fortunate that his first stop in this world was this archipelago. This place is filled with love. Whether it was the destruction of the naval branch or Arlong paradise, Raylen clearly understood just how significant these events were to the inhabitants of this archipelago. Ajian asked them to go and call the villagers. The reason for the decision was to have the entire village go together. It may have a great deal of meaning. Perhaps because they witnessed the destruction of the naval branch, they had a certain understanding of their own strength. However, there is also a possibility that, in Ajian's opinion, this might be their only chance in their lives. Especially after he personally buried the villagers of another village not far away. Ajian didn't want to wait any longer. He had never believed in nonsense like earning 100 million berries, but it was his only hope before, so he had to force himself to believe it. And now, a brand new hope has emerged. A hope that is more likely to be realized. He might not be of much help if he goes alone, he might not even be able to handle the weakest fishman. But the whole village went together. At least it can help in a little way, even if it's just killing the weakest murloc. Ajian thought that everyone in the entire Kakasha village would be willing to go. And Ajian's idea was indeed correct. In less than half an hour, all the villagers of Kakosia village arrived at the only road leading to Aran Paradise. In the past, only Ajian would wait here on this road. Observe whether the fishmen will return to the village to wreak havoc. So that the villagers can be notified in a timely manner. However, in the past, Ajian would only hide in the shadows and observe secretly. But now, all the villagers of Kokoyasi stood openly and honestly on this road. This is the road that Kakosia village used to take out. Facing the setting sun. Bathed in the glow of the setting sun. The group walked towards the direction of Alan Amusement Park without any hesitation. Chapter 12. Ajian walked at the very front. A gentle breeze blew the windmill above his head. The setting sun bathed the windmill above Ajian's head in a golden light. Ajian walked at the front, his face serious, and his whole demeanor unusually focused. It wasn't just Ajian. Raylen, Hawkeye, and Saitama followed after Ajian. All three of them had very serious expressions, even Saitama's expression became serious. That resolute face now looked rather handsome. Behind them stood all the villagers of Kokoyasi village. Everyone in the village who was still able to move gathered together. Everyone was carrying their weapons, swords, axes, and large iron maces. It's clear that the villagers had been preparing these weapons all along. Perhaps in their minds, they had already rehearsed the battle scene countless times. But now, all of this has become a reality. Every villager's face showed an unprecedented determination. The villagers clearly believed what Ajian said. The hopeful looks in their eyes when they set off made Leilun's heart feel inexplicably heavy. Rayleigh clearly knew this. Even I could easily take down that Arlong paradise. Not to mention that there were three of them together. But now, a sense of responsibility has crept into Raylan's heart. You, how dare you? Stop right there. Ahead on the road. Several burly, menacing-looking fishmen, armed with weapons, appeared in the crowd's view. The few fishmen walking by and the group heading towards Arlong Paradise met on this road. But even though the entire village was armed, the fishmen still saw it. But those fishmen showed no fear whatsoever. Instead, they grinned and shouted at the crowd. "You lowly humans, do you really think you are qualified to fight us just because you are carrying this junk? Ha 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 ha, look at this bunch of lowly, trashy people. It's utterly ridiculous. Ha 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 ha." Those fishmen laughed so freely, completely disregarding the people of this village. The unrestrained laughter of these fishmen seemed to have awakened some terrible memories in the villagers, causing some of them to involuntarily slow their pace. But soon, the fishmen's unrestrained laughter stopped completely. Because Raylen unleashed his power. For the villagers, all they could feel was Raylen's power, which gave them a sense of security. As for those mermen, they felt as if their spirits had been dealt a heavy blow. He was immediately stunned and stood there in shock. They were all somewhat unsteady on their feet, and the weapons in their hands clattered to the ground. However, neither of the two fishmen fainted. They seemed to be suppressed in place by an invisible force, completely unable to move. Ajian, who was in the lead, turned his head away in confusion when he saw the two fishmen looking like that. He turned his head. He then met Raylen's encouraging gaze. Although Lyran didn't say anything, Ajian clearly understood the meaning behind Lyran's gaze. Looking at the two fishmen in front of him, Ajian no longer hesitated and directly raised the axe in his hand and walked towards the two fishmen. I saw Ajian carrying an axe as he walked by. The two fishmen no longer wore their usual arrogant and domineering expressions. Instead, they wore expressions of utter terror. On the contrary, at this moment, the look of terror on Ajian's face was gone. Pfft! After walking up to one of the mermen, without the slightest hesitation, he swung his axe. However, this axe strike was not aimed directly at the merman's vitals. Instead, it landed heavily on the merman's arm. Perhaps because the axe hadn't been sharpened in time, although Ajian swung it with great force, he couldn't even sever an arm. They simply sliced off a piece of flesh from his upper arm, revealing the stark white bone beneath. The axe blade sliced through flesh and blood, even scraping off some bone fragments. The merman instantly began to howl in pain and curse. His body collapsed to the ground. Although Raylen had eased his pressure, allowing the merman to let out a wail, the merman could still only make the slightest movements on the ground. Ajian only swung his axe once, without continuing to chop, and then turned around and walked towards the villagers of Kokoyasi village. There was no communication whatsoever, only a glance. Noki, carrying an iron sword, also walked up to the fishman. Without hesitation, he thrust his sword forward. It pierced straight into the fishman's stomach, and blood gushed out. The fishman wailed in even greater agony, his cries growing ever more piercing. On the other side, the fishman, who was also suppressed by the imposing aura, trembled even more after seeing his companion in such a miserable state. The fishman looked at the people of Kokoyasi village with no more arrogance in his eyes, but fear for the first time. They even begged for mercy when faced with what they considered to be a lowly race. However, no one paid any attention to the two fishmen's shouts. The scene became unusually orderly. One by one, the villagers of Kokoyasi walked up to the fishmen and used the weapons in their hands. First, the real attack came, bringing them countless painful memories of the merfolk who had enslaved them for years. The merman's wails started off sharp and painful, then gradually faded away. The other merman did the same. Even though the two mermen were already beyond dead, the villagers kept attacking them one by one until everyone had attacked once. Raylen's aura surged. The two pools of blood and flesh in front of him were instantly shaken apart. The group of people, still marching in a grand procession, headed towards Allen Amusement Park. However, compared to the beginning, the villagers now have a more determined look in their eyes, and their gazes reveal the emotions they have hidden in their hearts for the past few years without any restraint. This was the first time in a long time that they had so intensely expressed their deepest emotions. Faced with the Murloc's evil deeds. Revenge or something. The villagers of Caucosia hadn't dared to dream of this for a long time. But now, there's really no point in even dreaming about it anymore. Because hope is just around the corner. Hope lies in their own hands. Chapter 13. Arlong Paradise. On the largest island in the Konomiya Islands. The high walls surrounding the base looked even more sturdy than those of a naval base, forming a thick, seemingly indestructible barrier. The entire complex looks like a huge garden, exceptionally beautiful and eye-catching. And surrounding this building is a wide moat. The entire amusement park was securely protected in the very central area. In the very center of the park stands a towering, magnificent structure, its opulence somewhat incongruous with the rest of the Konomiya Islands. Beside the moat, there were rows of beach chairs where fishmen played, lounged, and shouted, creating quite a lively scene. Moreover, the further they went in, the larger the fishmen became, and the more ferocious they looked. This place is the most luxurious building complex on the Konam Islands, Arlong Park, also known as Merman Park. And on a chair in the very center of the park, a long-nosed fishman with jagged teeth sat there imposingly. He was enormous, far exceeding the group of fishmen around him. His purplish-gray skin and mouth full of sharp teeth highlighted his fishman identity and ferocity. He has a sun-shaped tattoo on his left chest, wears a grey round hat, and is dressed in an open floral shirt. The ostentatious nature of its attire seems to reflect the owner's arrogant personality. Hey everyone, welcome to Arlong Paradise. Once you're here, forget everything that happened before and just have fun. Cheers! Let's eat and drink to our heart's content. As Arlong's voice rang out, the fishmen throughout the entire park erupted in excitement, once again swept up in a wave of revelry. And not far from Arlong, an octopus-like man was holding a plate of roasted meat and eating it heartily, seemingly enjoying the fun of the park. However, while enjoying himself, his eyes subtly revealed unease and sorrow. This octopus-like man is Little 8. And beside him, a fishman had a long mouth, protruding lips that looked like a gunfish, and rosy cheeks, making him look quite amusing. Little 8, sip. Chirp, the boss has gone out and found quite a few new friends this time. Yes, there are more and more fishmen in our amusement park now. I bet our boss will be expanding again soon. The Konomiya Islands alone can't satisfy him, chuckle. The two ate their grilled meat and chatted. Although surrounded by a sea of joy, the two did not indulge in pleasure to the fullest. Instead, their conversation revealed a deep concern for the Arlong pirates. As those who had followed Arlong from the very beginning, they knew better than anyone just how ambitious their current boss truly was. The Konomiya Islands, a mere archipelago. It's simply impossible to satisfy them anymore. Now, the boss's vision has been set on the entire East Blue Sea. The reason they kept that little girl from Kokoyasi village, told her the nonsense that 100 million berries could redeem the village, and had her draw a sea chart was for this purpose. However, this area of the East Blue Sea, despite being the weakest sea, the two of them still dared not even dream of controlling the entire East Sea. After all, this sea area is that person's hometown. You two stop hesitating like that. The more of our own kind we have, the more it demonstrates the strength of our Arlong pirates. Are you really satisfied with just the Cornish Islands? As the two were talking, a burly fishman dressed in a black karate uniform walked up behind them and spoke. Let's stop talking about these depressing topics and get ready to party. This fishman is Kruby. He is a soft-boned fishman with a 40th dan in fishman karate. His signature move, the 1,000-tile punch, can break 1,000 tiles underwater. He has a bounty of 9 million berries and is the strongest member of the Arlong pirates besides Arlong. These three are the three top officers of the Arlong pirates. The Arlong pirates are now expanding rapidly, and their leader, Arlong, is constantly setting sail and recruiting a large number of fishman companions to join them. However, as the number of fish people increased, they gradually became difficult to manage. Although the three of them always believed that the fishmen were indeed the most powerful race, they had not been particularly cruel to humans in the past. Until one day, their leader, Arlong, seemed to have changed, becoming increasingly brutal in his attacks on the humans of the Konam Islands. Furthermore, they learned to use Bailey to bribe the rat colonel in the naval branch, a man even the three of them looked down upon. And they built Alan Amusement Park. From that moment on, the entire Arlong pirates seemed to have changed. At first, the three of them were very happy, feeling that following Boss Arlong to the East Blue Sea was the best decision they had ever made. They spent their days eating, drinking, and having fun, and were extremely happy. But gradually, as more and more merfolk joined him, Boss Aaron's ambition grew ever larger. Worry began to creep into the hearts of the three of them. They didn't really care much about being cruel to humans or colluding with the rat colonel. After all, humans were just a lowly race, and they could treat them however they wanted. What they feared was the legendary Vice Admiral of the East Blue Sea, the naval hero, Garp. Although Jinbi, the current leader of the fishmen, has become one of the 7 warlords of the sea, this is why they dare to act arrogantly in the East Blue. However, all three of them knew very well that once the matter of the Konam Islands was exposed, the naval hero Garp would not care about such things. Especially today. The unease in the three of them grew stronger. "What are you three whispering about over there? Come here." At this moment, Arlong's gruff voice rang out. Upon hearing Arlong's voice, the three immediately got up and walked towards the direction where Arlong was. Looking at the group of merfolk standing behind Arlong, the three knew that this meant they were about to have another wave of subordinates. Based on the current preparations, all three knew that it wouldn't be long before they stepped out of the Kornomi Islands and conquered the next territory. However, when the three men arrived at Arlong's side, preparing to assign subordinates, suddenly, several fishmen stumbled and ran towards the park from the main entrance, looking quite flustered. This situation has never occurred since they landed on the Konam Islands and established Arlong Park. Seeing their flustered state, Arlong frowned and said with displeasure, "What happened? Why are you in such a panic?" However, before these fishmen could explain, "I heard it at the entrance of Alan Amusement Park." A loud bang was heard. Chapter 14. Boom! Boom! A tremendous sound followed. The entire city wall at the entrance of Alan Amusement Park collapsed with a roar, stirring up countless plumes of dust. Arlong and his companions, along with almost all the fishmen in the park, all turned their gazes toward the park's entrance. The unrestrained laughter seemed to freeze at this moment, and all the fishmen looked on in confusion, except for Alan and a few other officers, whose eyes were now filled with vigilance. Nowadays, apart from a few executives, almost all the fishmen in the Arlong pirates have been spoiled and turned into useless brats by this gentle and indulgent lifestyle. They have completely lost the vigilance they developed in the New World. Furthermore, after the city walls collapsed and the smoke completely dissipated. Ha 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 ha! When the thin villagers of Kokoyasi appeared before them, holding all sorts of weapons that didn't look like weapons, the entire Alan Amusement Park erupted in laughter. Almost all the fishmen present burst into unrestrained, maniacal laughter. Ha ha ha, you lowly humans! This is absolutely hilarious. Do these people really want to die? Look at how thin and weak they are, they were destined to be weak from birth. Since they're courting death, then kill them all. The fishmen present shouted and laughed. Completely unaware that the 3 top officers of their Arlong pirates, including their most powerful captain Arlong, were staring at a certain figure in the crowd, their bodies completely frozen, daring not to make a single move. Especially Xiao Bie, whose tentacles were trembling like leaves. Their gazes naturally all fell on Hawkeye, who was at the front. After all, among this group of people, the one they knew and were most familiar with was Hawkeye. After the gate and city wall were demolished, Hawkeye spotted Arlong and his gang and gave them a casual glance. Hawkeye couldn't hold back any longer and spoke directly to Eren in the distance. The defectors of the Sun Pirates, this is truly despicable. At that moment, a cold glint flashed in Hawkeye's sharp yellow eyes. If Rayleigh and the others hadn't been around, Hawkeye probably would have already taken action. Because on their way here, around the amusement park, the scenes they witnessed were far too bloody and too unbearable. All sorts of tortured and murdered humans, severed limbs, remains, and rotting bones, piled up into small hills. In this glamorous yet cruel world, Hawkeye strongly agrees with the law of the jungle, where the strong prey on the weak and the mighty reign supreme. However, such acts of cruelty are what Hawkeye detests most. After sensing the coldness and killing intent in Hawkeye's tone, Arlong had only one thought in his mind. Why would a powerhouse of Hawkeye's caliber appear here, right in front of me? A bead of cold sweat slid down Arlong's forehead. The other three officials behind him were even more shocked. In this paradise, perhaps the other fishmen didn't fully understand how terrifying the man before them was, but these three knew very well. The world's greatest swordsman. Needless to say, it was those few. Even Jinbe, the leader, was no match for the man in front of him. This man is one of the strongest people in the world, and also one of the 7 warlords of the sea. For someone of this caliber to appear before them, and even stand in front of the villagers of Kokoyasi village, to utter such a chilling statement. They understood perfectly what this meant. If we can't give this man a satisfactory explanation today, it's very possible that the entire Allen amusement park will be destroyed by this man. After his mind raced, Arlong tried his best to suppress his intense panic and anxiety, and presented himself in the most natural way possible. Shut up, all of you! Don't disturb our distinguished guests with your noisy laughter. After scolding the fishmen who were still laughing wildly around him, Arlong, with a fawning smile and a hunched back, walked towards Hawkeye in the distance, talking as he went. Great Hawkeye, I think there might be some misunderstanding between us. We fishmen have always admired strong men like you, and our leader, Jinbe, is one of the 7 warlords of the sea, just like you. I wonder if you could consider our leader's position. Your boss? Didn't you betray the Sun Pirates a long time ago? Upon hearing Raylen's sudden words, Eren stopped in his tracks. Only now did Arlong realize that the group of people in front of him were positioned in a way that was completely different from what he had imagined. Perhaps because he only had eyes for Hawkeye, Arlong naturally assumed that Hawkeye should be standing at the very front of the group. But upon closer inspection now, Hawkeye, the world's greatest swordsman, was standing behind this young man, side by side with a bald man, even a step behind him. This positioning indicates that Hawkeye is not the leader of this group. The young man who had just spoken, whose body was riddled with flaws and who showed no trace of the aura of a strong person, was actually the leader of this group. Who is this man? Arlong had absolutely no clue. Sir, you jest. We have never defected from the Sun Pirates, nor have we ever betrayed Boss Jinbe. Arlong kept a low profile as much as possible, continuing to walk in Hawkeye's direction, and mentioning Jinbe in every word he spoke. It seems that only in this way can one suppress the unease in one's heart, only in this way can one have the confidence to approach legendary strongmen like Hawkeye. It's a pity. This short distance proved to be countless times more difficult than Arlong had imagined. Because just as Eren was about to approach Raylen and his group, suddenly, a chill ran down his spine, a deathly warning loomed in his heart, causing Arlong to stop in his tracks. At this moment, an overwhelming aura instantly permeated the entire Allen amusement park. Such momentum! At that moment, Hawkeye turned his head and looked at the source of the aura, Saitama standing next to Rayleigh. This aura was different from Raylen's domineering and overwhelming aura. This is a terrifying aura that strikes straight to the depths of the soul, bringing an extreme threat of death and making one feel as if they are on the verge of death in an instant. It felt as if, in the next moment, he would be reduced to ashes, shattered into dust by a single punch. As expected, this one also possesses Conqueror's Haki. Hawkeye wasn't surprised that Saitama could unleash such an aura. From the very beginning, Hawkeye knew just how terrifying Saitama was. Seeing Saitama display his imposing aura, Hawkeye was also very excited. He wanted to see just how astonishing this powerful figure's attack would be. Chapter 15. Boss. What's wrong? The smell of these weirdos is absolutely awful. Can I just get rid of them? He turned his head away. Looking at Saitama, whose face was now completely serious and focused. Raylen nodded calmly. Facing the Arlong pirates before him, these were characters he had previously seen in anime. When I first watched the series, I wasn't particularly disgusted by some of the characters. In fact, I even thought these merfolk had some redeeming qualities. But when you're actually there... This is the route we took from Kokoyasi village. And what I just saw outside the amusement park, that hellish scene. Raylen truly had no desire to talk to them anymore. At this moment, he was as angry as Saitama, who unconsciously exuded murderous intent. And the very next second after Raylen nodded slightly, Saitama made no other unnecessary movements. He simply took a few steps forward, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, threw a punch at the Allen amusement park in front of him. The instant Saitama raised his hand, Hawkeye instinctively tightened his grip on his sword. The moment Saitama raised his hand, although the target of his punch wasn't himself, it still made Hawkeye feel for the second time how close death was to him. His survival instinct kicked in, and he gripped his sword tightly. In the pupils of Eagle Eye, Saitama calmly and slowly raised his arm, his clenched fist seemingly forming a terrifying vortex, absorbing all the energy around him. At this moment, Hawkeye's pupils seemed to see nothing else but a fist encased in a red leather case, which was magnifying infinitely. Then it moves lightly and slowly, yet it makes it impossible for anyone to make any move, completely unpredictable. He threw a punch towards the Allen amusement park ahead. Boom! The moment the punch was unleashed, a tremendous sonic boom resounded through the sky. Hawkeye clearly saw that after that punch was thrown, the entire Allen amusement park in front of him was instantly struck by a terrifying and indescribable force. The entire Arlong paradise, including all the buildings and the fishmen. In almost the shortest instant he could perceive it, it turned into dust. Then it was scattered into the sky and the ocean, some unknown distance away. In just a second or two, the entire Allen amusement park seemed to have been erased, vanishing into thin air from Eagle Eye's sight and perception. Then a strong gust of wind instantly carried away the dust that was already flying in the air due to inertia. Hawkeye, that's Jorge Mihawk's nickname. Jorger Mihawk possesses eyes as sharp as an eagle's, with the terrifying ability to see through things. Under Mihawk's gaze, all techniques lose their flashy exterior and reveal their true nature. This is also one of Mihawk's most prized talents. But now, under those eagle eyes, all Mihawk could see were these few dreamlike images. In the eyes of the villagers of Kokoyasi village behind them, all I saw was the bald Saitama, who took a few steps forward and threw a punch at the air in front of him. Then, it was as if the whole world had been muted. The once hellish Alonzo Park, the place they feared most deeply, had completely vanished before their eyes. At this moment, all they could see in their field of vision were the remaining parts of the island and some lingering clouds in the sky. From their perspective, that is, from behind Saitama, all I could see was what appeared to be a huge, fist-shaped hole in front of me. Everyone present was stunned. They are now completely unable to process the information they see, and unable to accept what is actually happening in front of them. Including Raylen. But soon, Ajian, who was in the lead, had tears streaming down his face without him even realizing it, and his body went limp as he slumped to the ground. After Akina's arrival, there were Nojiko, Nami, and all the villagers of Kokoyasi village. Looking at the scene before him, he belatedly realized what was happening. Cheers, screams, and heart-wrenching cries. At that moment, it all erupted. The villagers of Kokoyasi were all in tears. No! At that moment, Raylen suddenly shouted. Her voice trembled with a hint of tears. As if realizing something, they ran towards the tower that had been standing there. Unfortunately, he stopped after running only a few steps, because in front of him lay the edge of the remaining half of the island. The entire Arlong paradise, all the fishmen, all the buildings, everything, all of it was wiped from this world by Saitama in an instant, without leaving a single trace. This naturally includes all the treasures in Alan's paradise. That evening, the villagers of Kokoyasi village all go to bed very early. After venting their emotions, the villagers seemed to have been freed from immense burdens, and they all wept uncontrollably. Later, Nojiko, Nami, and the others organized everyone to help each other back to the village. Compared to their fierce departure, which seemed determined to fight to the death, the villagers returned in a state of disarray, supporting each other as if they had just survived a major battle. Even though there was no battle, he was moved to tears by the destruction of Arlong paradise and cried until he was exhausted. On the way back, Raylen watched the villagers supporting each other. They were laughing very happily. As for Saitama, he adopted a simple and carefree demeanor, appearing somewhat oblivious. Hawkeye silently followed behind Saitama. From the moment that punch was thrown until now, Hawkeye's mind had been filled with his experiences over the past 2 days. Looking at the two people following behind a group of villagers, somewhat unserious yet seemingly extremely ordinary, Hawkeye couldn't explain what he was thinking at that moment. If his previous intention was simply to spar with truly strong opponents in order to improve his swordsmanship. So, what about him now? I've completely lost the desire to practice with someone. But at the same time, they no longer had any intention of leaving. I'm exhausted. Nojiko, go and call a few more people to help. Early the next morning, Nojiko, Nami, and some villagers woke up early. After waking up, they went to a small hill behind the mountain and carried a huge wooden crate that had been buried underground towards the courtyard where Raylen and the others were. Chapter 16. System, begin the lottery. Inside the room at this moment, Raylen was unaware of the actions of the villagers outside. After waking up, Raylen felt the time was right and immediately chose to extract a new entry. At this moment, Raylen desperately wanted to become stronger and have more abilities. No way! Why is it that the first person to summon a companion to your side is a freak? Moreover, the first native they encountered was the greatest swordsman in the pirate world, one of the most powerful individuals. This native doesn't seem to have any intention of leaving yet. It seems she has a plan to stay by my side and become my chef. But having a native like this by your side is quite nice. Ding! The host now has a balance of 350 million berries. Would you like to draw a random setting? Yes. Draw 3 times directly. Ding! Random setting being drawn. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the following settings: Strongman, Sea King, Sunny and Cheerful Big Boy. Stronger, this attribute will be incorporated into the first impression upon meeting the host, forcibly adding the word stronger, and the closer the host is, the stronger this impression will be. Aquaman, possesses the ability to manipulate the ocean. The strength of this ability is related to his affinity with the ocean. His ability naturally grows daily with daily contact with the ocean. Sunny and cheerful young man, your smile is like the warm sun in winter, conveying genuine gentleness and significantly increasing the positive impression you make on the person you're smiling at. As the system's voice faded away, Raylen gave a wry smile. Of the 3 entries this time, this is probably the most useful one I've created for myself. Aquaman? What kind of name is that? I'm a pure love warrior, I hate minotaurs and those kinds of people the most. However, this ability is undoubtedly one of the strongest in this world. Because of any devil fruit user, they were all afraid of seawater. But he himself could control the seawater. If used properly, this ability could definitely become a miracle-making power. My affinity for seawater was probably very low at first, since I'm prone to seasickness. However, in this world, it's hard to avoid contact with seawater. With this skill, Raylen felt that he could become stronger every day even while lying down. However, the other two entries seem rather useless. There is no additional improvement or bonus to one's actual combat strength. That strong person is simply someone who makes everyone think they are strong at first glance. The phrase "everything exists" in this description, at least in Rayleigh's current view, that refers to all people, possibly including sea kings, minks, fishmen, and other such creatures. Its effect is probably not particularly significant. A sunny and cheerful young man, needless to say. Overall, however, Raylen was quite satisfied with the setup for these draws, at least the system didn't include any thank you messages or anything like that. In his previous life, Raylen had read quite a few online novels. Every time Raylen sees something like "thank you for your patronage" that's been extracted, he feels disgusted. Brother Raylen. Just as Raylen finished extracting the settings, he heard Nojiko's voice coming from outside the door. It seems that the destruction of Alan Paradise had a very significant impact on the people of Kokoyasi village. Even her voice sounded much more lively than yesterday. Moreover, her tone was no longer as bland and dull as before, but rather had a touch of girlish playfulness. Brother Raylen. Are you still half asleep? Nami's voice also came in at this moment. And it wasn't just two women, there were also many other villagers' voices. Just by listening to their voices, you could feel their heartfelt joy and excitement. The emotional release that followed yesterday's destruction of Alan Amusement Park. What they are like now. It has gradually begun to revert to its original state several years ago, before the Arlong pirates invaded these islands. Raylen pushed open the door and stepped into the courtyard. He greeted the villagers, whose faces were beaming with smiles and whose eyes were filled with gratitude, in a warm and friendly manner. Every villager was very enthusiastic, and many even crowded at the front, wanting to shake hands with Raylen. The villagers were carrying all sorts of things and putting them into the courtyard. However, what caught Rayleigh's eye the most was a huge wooden cart that Nami, Nojiko, and Ken and the others had pushed over, with stacks of boxes on it. What is this? After staring at the boxes for a while, Raylen asked Nami, who was smiling brightly, with a puzzled look. Brother Raylen, you'll see when you open it. Nami's beautiful face beamed with a bright, unrestrained smile, tinged with a touch of pride. Raylen sensed that overwhelming joy with perfect clarity. Under the eager gazes of Nami, Noji, and the others, Raylen opened the lid of the top box. Wow! The Golden Legend! Upon opening, the first thing that caught the eye was a dazzling golden light. A chest was filled to the brim with gold and treasure. As Raylen opened the box, Aegeon casually opened the box next to him as well. Inside that box was a whole box full of Pele. Mr. Raylen, this is a gift from our Kokoyasi village to express our gratitude. Brother Raylen, I saved up most of these. As soon as Aegeon finished speaking, Nami proudly raised her little head. Upon hearing Nami's words, Rayleigh instantly realized what was happening. Really? For the past few years, Nami seems to have been working hard to make money, acting as a petty thief, roaming between various pirate ships. Based on this timeline, Nami has indeed accumulated at least tens of millions of berries. These should be what's right in front of me. The Konam Islands were originally a very wealthy commercial archipelago. This is why Captain Rat, the 16th Division of the Navy, was able to amass over 300 million berries. Keep in mind that devil fruits in the New World are only worth around 100 million. More than 300 million pelis is already an incredibly staggering astronomical figure. However, it is precisely because of this that we can perceive just how much evil Colonel Rat and his men have committed on these islands. If it weren't for Colonel Rat and his gang, the Konam Islands would undoubtedly be one of the richest areas in the East Blue Sea. Faced with Nami and the others presenting them with treasures. Without any hesitation, Raylen nodded and accepted it. Seeing that Raylen hadn't refused their offer and had accepted the treasure, the villagers in the courtyard smiled even more broadly and happily. Chapter 17. Let's drink. Our village's orange wine is famously delicious. Our village's wine is pretty good too, come on, drink. Lord Lyron, please try some pears from our village. They're sweet, crisp, and used to be the best-selling pears in the East Sea. In the blink of an eye, Lyron and his group have been in Kokoyasi village for 5 or 6 days. In the past 5 or 6 days, news of the destruction of the 16th Marine Division in Arlong Park has spread throughout the entire Konomiya Islands. Upon hearing this good news, people from other villages also rushed to Kokoyasi village to pay their respects to Lyron. The entire Konomiya Islands. These past few days have been filled with a joyful and cheerful atmosphere. The people in every village are busy rebuilding their homes and helping their neighboring villages. The people in the various villages on the archipelago seem to have become more united than before after these past few years. Thanks to Saitama, a kind-hearted and powerful man. Hawkeye would also occasionally show up and follow Saitama to do some things. Therefore, the reconstruction work in each village is progressing very rapidly. This banquet tonight. After the reconstruction work in each village was basically completed, everyone gathered in Kokozia village to celebrate the rebirth of the Konam Islands. Having annihilated the 16th Marine Division and Raylen's group from Arlong Paradise, he rightfully deserves to be the protagonist of this banquet. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on the three of them. The three of them enjoyed their drinks very much. Since I came into this world, these past few days have been arguably the most relaxed and enjoyable period of time Raylen has ever had. Although the villagers wanted him to stay, Raylen knew that if he stayed in the Konami Islands and in Kokozia village, he would definitely be in big trouble later. After all, he had destroyed the 16th Marine Division base. No matter how many horrific things Colonel Rat did, as long as he destroyed the naval base, he would definitely be labeled a pirate. Now that things have been resolved here, it's time for me to leave. In this world, there are so many places I want to visit. Brother Raylen, are you leaving soon? While everyone was drinking, enjoying delicious food, and having a great time, Rayleigh turned his head and saw Nami standing right behind him, hugging him tightly. He instantly felt a warm sensation on the back of his head, it was so sweet. Nami pressed her head close to her ear and whispered this question to herself. Brother Raylen, when you leave, can you take me with you? I'm really amazing. I can draw nautical charts and sail ships. I'm a very skilled navigator. Nami's words of self-recommendation echoed in Rayleigh's ears. Navigator. It seems that our ship is indeed lacking a navigator. Moreover, Nami's role is not just limited to navigation. Nami's personality determines that she will be the kind of person who enlivens the atmosphere of the entire ship and makes all the crew members more united. Plus, with only a few grown men on his own boat, it was indeed incredibly boring. The girl in front of me. The sun shines brightly, and one's heart is broad. Most importantly, he was extremely generous and had a very good impression of her. Raylen simply couldn't think of a reason to refuse. As for the Straw Hat crew, it's none of my business. Sure, if you want to come with me, of course you can. Yay! I'm going to tell my sister this good news right away. After receiving an affirmative answer from Rayleigh, Nami immediately ran off happily. Looking around at the villagers, Lyron greeted and chatted with some of the people he knew well. Most importantly, Raylen told the villagers about his plan to leave. He also asked the villagers to do him a favor and build a decent boat. Now, it's my own little wooden boat. There's no room left for all these people, and there are still supplies. The boat is no problem. Every village has people who know how to build boats, we'll definitely prepare a large one for you. Mr. Raylen, I know you can't stay here with us forever, you're a great man. But we hope you'll remember the Cornish Islands, remember our villages. We'll always stand behind you. Mr. Raylen, let me toast you again. Upon learning that Raylen would be leaving in a few days after the ship was completed, the villagers all came up to say goodbye to him. They expressed their gratitude and reluctance to part, whether through tears or laughter. But everyone. They all expressed their sincerest blessings to Raylen. These villagers also knew perfectly well that it was impossible to leave Raylen on the Konami Islands forever, or in their few villages forever. Expressing gratitude time and time again, and praying for Raylen's journey, are what each of them wants to do most right now. That's the only thing they can do. 2 more days passed. With the combined efforts of Raylen, Saitama, and everyone else, a huge wooden ship was completed. Inside the ship's hold, there were all sorts of local specialties, as well as the boxes of treasure and berries that Nami had brought over earlier. Phew! Nojiko finished moving the last box of oranges. Standing at the bow of the ship, she looked down at the group of people standing together, bidding a final farewell to Raylen and the others, and couldn't help but smile easily. It has been 10 days since Arlong Paradise was destroyed. Over the course of 10 days, everyone accepted the fact that the Navy branch and Arlong Paradise had been completely destroyed, and their lives became happier and happier. Is your current life the same as it was before all of this happened? People have forgotten. But people know. They are living happily now, and all of this is because of Lord Raylen, Lord Saitama, and Lord Mihawk standing before them. Few adults remain, perhaps they are still living in that hellish place. On the ground, people were reluctantly saying goodbye to Raylen. On the deck, Nami saw Nojiko laughing at the crowd below and quickly walked over to her. Nojiko, you really don't want to come with me? Yes, I want to, but right now, I want to stay and protect Kokoyashi village, and our family's orange grove. After hearing Nojiko's words, Nami turned her head and gave her sister a deep look. Go with Lord Raylen. Only by following him can you fulfill your dream. Sister, I want you to come with